Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez never saw it coming. What started as a routine oversight hearing has exploded into the biggest political scandal of the decade. Pam Bondi, former Attorney General of Florida, just uncovered documents so damaging they could end AOC's entire career overnight. The Department of Justice has issued a sealed warrant, yes, a warrant, following Bondi's explosive investigation. And what they found wasn't just corruption. It was a calculated betrayal of everything AOC claimed to stand for. You think you've seen Washington scandals before? This changes everything. The evidence Bondi presented has members of Congress from both parties scrambling to distance themselves. And the worst part? AOC knew this was coming for months and desperately tried to bury it. This isn't just another political scandal. This is the moment Washington insiders have feared for years. The house of cards is finally collapsing, and AOC is at the center of it all. I'm about to show you exactly what Pam Bondi discovered, why it matters, and how this could reshape American politics forever. By the time you finish watching this video, you'll understand why this isn't just about AOC anymore. It's about exposing a system of corruption that goes deeper than anyone imagined. And trust me, what I'm about to reveal is just the beginning. Act 2. The setup, 1 to 3 minutes. It began on a rainy Tuesday morning in the Capitol. The House Oversight Committee was conducting what appeared to be a standard review of government. Spending. Cameras rolled as usual, capturing what most expected would be another day of political theater. But Pam Bondi wasn't there for theater. She was there for truth. Bondi, invited as a special witness due to her expertise in government transparency, sat quietly reviewing her notes as committee members delivered their opening statements. AOC, seated confidently at the dais, occasionally checked her phone, seemingly unconcerned. "Madam Chair," Bondi began when finally acknowledged, "I appreciate the opportunity to address this committee today, but I'm afraid the documents I've been reviewing require us to drastically alter the scope of this hearing." The room fell silent. "Over the past 6 months, my team has been investigating a pattern of financial discrepancies involving several members of this body. What we found led us directly to Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez's office." Bondi held up a thick blue folder stamped "Confidential." This contains evidence that Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez has been operating a shadow advisory firm that received payments from the same green energy company she publicly championed and helped secure federal funding for. The payments were carefully laundered through 3 separate LLCs before reaching accounts controlled by her former campaign staffers. AOC's expression shifted instantly from boredom to shock. "That's absurd," she interjected. "I've been the loudest voice against corporate influence." Bondi didn't flinch. "That's what made it so effective, Congresswoman." Camera flashes erupted as Bondi opened the folder. Page 1. Incorporation documents for Sunrise Consulting Group, established 3 weeks after you took office. Page 2. Wire transfers totaling $1.8 million from Solar Future Technologies, which received $37 million in federal grants after your impassioned speech on their behalf. Journalists frantically typed on their phones. Committee members leaned forward in disbelief. "And most damaging," Bondi continued, her voice steady. Page 3. A Department of Justice memorandum requesting a sealed warrant to access your private communications regarding these transactions. The gavel crashed down repeatedly as the room erupted, but it was too late. The bomb had detonated, and this was just the beginning. The hearing descended into chaos. The chairwoman struggled to maintain order as committee members from both parties demanded immediate answers. Outside, news crews scrambled to set up additional cameras as word spread through Washington like wildfire. Bondi remained composed, methodically arranging her documents as AOC conferred frantically with her staff. When order was finally restored, Pam Bondi rose again. "I want to be perfectly clear about what we're seeing here," she said, her voice cutting through the tension. "This isn't just about money. It's about a fundamental betrayal of public trust. She clicked a remote, and a screen behind her illuminated with a complex web of financial transactions. This diagram represents the flow of money from 3 major green energy corporations to Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez's network. Notice how each transaction was split into smaller amounts, then routed through different shell companies before reconsolidating. Here, she pointed to a red box labeled SCG Holdings, a company where the Congresswoman's former campaign manager serves as the sole director. AOC grabbed her microphone. "This is a coordinated political attack. I fought harder than anyone against corporate interests." Bondi nodded slowly. "Yes, you have. Publicly. And that's precisely what made this scheme so effective. Your passionate, anti-corporate rhetoric provided the perfect cover for your private dealings." She clicked to the next slide, a timeline of AOC's public statements alongside dates of suspicious payments. March 15th. You delivered a floor speech denouncing fossil fuel subsidies. March the 16th. Solar Future Technologies donated $50,000 to your campaign. March 17th. You introduced legislation creating $200 million in grants that Solar Future was uniquely positioned to receive. March 20th. $175,000 was transferred to Sunrise Consulting Group. Gasps echoed through the chamber. April 3rd. You posted a viral video criticizing tax breaks for wealthy corporations. April 5th. Green Path Infrastructure contributed $80,000 to your piece. April 8th. You co-sponsored a bill directing $340 million toward urban infrastructure projects using GreenPath's patented technology. AOC shook her head vehemently. "These are coincidences. I've championed green policies since before I took office." Bondi nodded again. "Convenient coincidences, repeatedly, for 3 years." She turned back to the committee. The Department of Justice didn't reach these conclusions lightly. Their investigation began after whistleblowers within your own staff came forward, concerned about pressure to approve these arrangements. Cameras panned to AOC, whose composed facade was visibly cracking. "Let's be perfectly clear about what happened here," Bondi continued. "The Congresswoman created a brilliant scheme. Attack the very system she was secretly exploiting. By positioning herself as the ultimate outsider fighting corporate power, she ensured that any accusations would look like political retaliation." A Republican committee member jumped in. "Ms. Bondi, are you suggesting this was premeditated?" "The evidence suggests it was methodical," Bondi replied. "The companies involved received over $600 million in federal funding championed by the Congresswoman. Meanwhile, entities connected to her former staffers received approximately $3.2 million in consulting fees." The committee chairman, visibly shaken, addressed AOC directly. "Congresswoman, would you like to respond to these allegations?" AOC leaned into her microphone, her voice sharper than before. "This is a coordinated smear campaign orchestrated by fossil fuel interests threatened by my Green New Deal advocacy. These connections are being deliberately misrepresented to damage my reputation." Bondi shuffled her papers calmly. "Interesting theory. Unfortunately for you, one of the whistleblowers provided copies of text messages in which you personally approved these arrangements." She held up her phone, displaying screenshots on the screen. I quote, "The consulting arrangement works as long as there's no direct connection. Make sure everyone understands the protocol." The room fell deadly silent. Before AOC could respond, Bondi delivered her final blow. "Madam Chair, I am formally submitting these documents to the Ethics Committee. Additionally, I must inform the committee that as of 9:30 this morning, the Department of Justice has unsealed its warrant application regarding this matter." She turned to AOC, whose face had gone pale. "Congresswoman, federal agents are currently executing a search warrant at your district and capital offices. Your devices and accounts have been subpoenaed. The Department of Justice isn't just investigating these financial improprieties, They're treating this as a potential case of wire fraud, honest services fraud, and conspiracy. AOC stared in disbelief as Bondi concluded. The system you claimed to be fighting was actually your shield. And now, that shield has cracked wide open. If you're finding this information valuable, make sure to like this video and hit subscribe to stay updated on all the latest developments in this explosive case. Turn on notifications so you don't miss a single detail as this story continues to unfold. As news of the Department of Justice warrant spread, Washington insiders expected AOC to follow the standard crisis playbook. Deny everything, attack the messenger, hire high-powered attorneys, and disappear from public view. What happened next stunned everyone. 3 hours after the hearing, AOC called a press conference. No staff, no lawyers, just her and a single microphone on the Capitol steps. As cameras crowded around, she took a deep breath and looked directly into the lenses. Today, serious allegations were made against me in my office, she began, her voice surprisingly steady. The American people deserve the truth. So here it is. I knew about these payments. I knew about these companies. I knew about the connections. The crowd of reporters gasped collectively, but not for the reasons Pam Bondi suggested. She pulled out a slim black folder of her own. 18 months ago, I was approached by individuals claiming to represent green energy interests. They offered campaign support in exchange for legislative priorities. Instead of reporting them, immediately I made a different choice. She opened the folder and held up what appeared to be an FBI letter. I contacted the FBI's Public Corruption Unit. Together, we devised an operation to identify the full network of corporate interests attempting to buy influence in Congress. The companies mentioned today weren't paying me. They were being investigated by me in cooperation with federal authorities. Reporters frantically updated their stories as AOC continued. The shell companies, the staffers involved, the text messages, all part of an elaborate sting operation that has identified 37 corporations and 52 current and former members of Congress involved in a massive influence-buying scheme. At that exact moment across Washington, simultaneous FBI raids were beginning at offices of 2 senators and 4 representatives, evenly split between Republicans and Democrats. The warrant Ms. Bondi referenced is real, AOC continued. But it wasn't targeted at me. It was the culmination of the investigation I helped initiate, an investigation that required absolute secrecy, even from my closest allies. She held up a document bearing the Department of Justice seal. This operation, codenamed Glass House, is the largest anti-corruption sting in congressional history. And today, Pam Bondi unwittingly helped us bring it home by publicly revealing documents that will now be admissible as evidence against the actual perpetrators. Back in the committee room, Pam Bondi was receiving an urgent message from her own sources. Her expression transformed from confidence to disbelief as she read. Her phone, the twist was devastating. The hunter had become the hunted. AOC wasn't finished. Ms. Bondi's testimony today claimed I was secretly working with these corporations. The truth is exactly the opposite. I was working against them, gathering evidence of how they operate. She held up another document with highlighted sections. This is a transcript of a recorded meeting with Solar Future executives where they explicitly discussed how to use legitimate climate policy as cover for securing exclusive government contracts. They specifically targeted me because of my vocal advocacy, believing my support would be unquestioned. News alerts buzzed on phones throughout the crowd as the FBI confirmed the operation. For 18 months, I've lived with the knowledge that this day would come, that I'd be publicly accused of the very corruption I was fighting to expose. I accepted that risk because the system is truly broken, just not in the way Ms. Bondi suggested. Back in the hearing room, Pam Bondi was hastily gathering her documents. Her earlier confidence shattered. The committee members sat in stunned Silence, realizing they had just witnessed one of the most extraordinary political reversals in American history. The Department of Justice will be making a full statement within the hour, AOC concluded. But I wanted the American people to hear it from me first. Today marks the beginning of a cleaning of the House and the Senate. As she turned to leave, a reporter shouted, "Congresswoman, did you just use Pam Bondi to advance your own investigation?" AOC paused, then turned back to the microphones. Ms. Bondi was so convinced of my guilt, she never questioned the convenient timing of the leaked documents she received. She never asked why whistleblowers suddenly appeared with exactly the evidence she needed. She saw what she wanted to see, and in doing so, she unknowingly became the most effective anti-corruption advocate in Washington. The political earthquake had just begun, and nobody could have predicted what would happen next. The aftermath was seismic. Within hours, the Department of Justice confirmed every detail of AOC's statement. Operation Glass House was real, a CDC deep-cover investigation involving multiple federal agencies aimed at exposing corporate influence buying across party lines. FBI Director Marcus Johnson appeared at a hastily organized press conference flanked by senior DOJ officials. Today represents the culmination of the most comprehensive public corruption investigation in FBI history, Johnson stated. Thanks to the cooperation of Representative Ocasio-Cortez and several other members of Congress who served as confidential informants, we have documented evidence of systematic attempts to purchase legislative influence. The evidence was overwhelming. Text messages, recorded meetings, financial transactions, all meticulously gathered by AOC and other unnamed lawmakers working with federal authorities. As evening fell, 6 members of Congress had been taken into custody. 4 corporate executives were being arraigned. And this was just the beginning. Pam Bondi, meanwhile, had disappeared from public view. Her carefully constructed case, built on documents that had been deliberately placed in her path, had backfired catastrophically. The whistleblowers she cited were actually FBI operatives. The financial records she proudly displayed had been strategically leaked to advance the federal investigation. In a cruel twist of irony, she had become the unwitting star of AOC's show. By the following morning, Operation Glass House was trending worldwide. Political analysts struggled to process the magnitude of what had occurred. This wasn't just another Washington scandal. It was a fundamental restructuring of power dynamics that had existed for generations. 3 days later, AOC finally granted a single in-depth interview to explain how it all unfolded. The approach from these corporate interests came shortly after I took office, she explained. They thought my progressive image made me an ideal target, someone who could deliver credibility to their projects while deflecting suspicion. Instead of rejecting them outright, I saw an opportunity to expose the entire system. I contacted the FBI, and together we developed a strategy to play along just enough to identify all the players involved. The interviewer looked skeptical. But you publicly championed legislation that directly benefited these companies. AOC nodded. Legislation that would have advanced green energy regardless of which companies were involved.